Now, our next guest on Breakfast is a man who's combined his own experience of living with depression and his creative background in advertising.
Matthew Johnston has written a series of very simple books and very well known. His most well known became the basis of a World Health Organization campaign about depression.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog.
Ah yes, the black dog follows far too many Australians, far too many people around the world. His latest book centres on resilience, and Matthew Johnston, who is of course the creative director at the well-known Black Dog Institute, joins us now from Sydney to talk resilience. Good morning, nice to talk to you, Matthew.
Good morning.
Why turn your attention to the idea of resilience? It's a real buzzword now. We hear this thrown around all the time, particularly at schools.
I think, well, it's a natural progression of my journey. I like to think of my books as a Star Wars trilogy, if you like. I've started on the dark side and I've worked my way through the light. And I think, when you go through adversity, I think resilience is the sort of natural outcome when you've gone through that journey.
So let's talk about what resilience is and what it isn't. I mentioned before it's a buzzword, and I hear it thrown around now to such an extent that I think, no, that's not what I reckon resilience is. Is resilience just sucking it up and dealing with it, or is it something else?
No, I think resilience, the actual term came from metals, the ability to be flexible and to bounce back. There's a lovely saying which goes along the lines of, it's better to flex like a reed than snap like a tall oak in a strong wind. And I think that's really what it's about. It's about the ability to bounce back, to overcome adversity and to really to grow from an experience. And I think it's really important to stress that it's not necessarily about adverse or terrible events. It can be sort of climbing a mountain, running a marathon, having a child, getting a degree. I think anything that really challenges us both physically and mentally.
Yes, you make that point in your little illustrated book, and it's another example of your real talent to illustrate. It's a lovely little sort of graphic book, if you like, about that. Well, you talk about it. It doesn't have to be some trauma. In order to become resilient, you don't have to put yourself through the fires of hell, although that might sometimes happen. Is it then just about understanding what it is to grow up and to change?
Well, look, I think, all of us lead different lives, obviously, but I think we all can sort of come to the same sort of experiences along the way. We'll probably all have some sort of form of heartbreak. We might have some form of redundancy. We might have some form of emotional upheaval. There may be a death, all these sort of things. And really how we come to these junctions in our lives is really depends on who we are and how we're wired and our upbringing and all those sorts of things. But I think there are different ways that we can deal with it along the way. And I think this is where resilience and well-being sort of come together. And it's not that we necessarily wake up the next day and go, right, I'm going to radically change my life. It's really a period of life management skills, if you like.
And that's what this book is. I mean, I have to say I have a natural resistance to a book that's sort of a series of aphorisms, if you like, sort of, feel-good statements that I'll open one day and it'll just get me through the day. Yeah. I'm naturally sceptical about that. So how am I supposed to approach this book?
Well, look, I think, this book it's a roadmap. I like to call it the VW for the people. It's got a little bit of something in it for everyone. And I think, it's really, half the book is really, about the challenges that we face and how people tend to address them. I do a lot of public speaking around the country. I speak to corporates, I speak to farmers, I speak to schools. And I think, a lot of people in different communities behave differently. My dad was a farmer. He was very much, she'll be right, pull your socks up, toughen up.
Rub it with a brick.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And I think, the second half of the book really is about the things that we need to do. And quite often they're all the things that we know that we should do, about eating well, about sleeping well, learning meditation, mindfulness, exercise, all those sorts of things. But they're the things that we constantly forget to do. And I think, in an ever increasingly busy sort of work life, where we are very time poor, these are the things that we need to put our energies into to maintain a healthy and well-being sort of life.
I think one page that I'm really interested in that's in the book where you talk about our show face. and
Yes.
the face that we show to the world,
Yes.
and you know, putting on a good front and reflecting positivity and the like. And you talk about the energy that it simply consumes to do that, and how much more energy we might have for ourselves and for managing our issues if we simply stopped trying to put on a show. That's a hard thing to do, though.
Yes, well, look, I worked on advertising for 15 years, and you're only as good as your last ad.
Yes.
And and it was all about winning business and impressing clients and winning awards and all that sort of thing. And that's it's if you're going through emotional difficulty, say for example, like I was going through a bit of depression, it's a very, very hard show face to maintain, because you're living two parallel different universes. And I always say that if I'd actually invested into understanding what I was going through and actually working on what I was going through rather than trying to cover it up, I would have healed myself in half the time. So I think there's a lot of collateral damage along the way for people just trying to cover things up and trying to push on through.
But how, as a community, do you really think we've evolved to the point where we will be compassionate enough and accepting enough of people showing us how they really are and how they really feel?
Well, look, I think through the work that I've seen at the Black Dog Institute and going out and speaking in public halls around the country, I think there's a real change and a real shift in people wanting to know, people wanting the information, and to my biggest thing, I suppose my biggest shtick is prevention is the biggest cure of many things. So if we know what to do and we know how to get there and we know how to address these things when we come to that place in our lives, we're going to be far better off. Life isn't just plain sailing. I call it, there's a section in the book about the hills and dales of life, and I think if we can accept that life isn't necessarily going to always be great and necessarily going to always be bad, that there is going to be ups and downs, we're going to be far better equipped to deal with it when we get to that point in our lives.
Matthew Johnson, it's good talking to you about this today. The book is called Resilience, and I'm pleased you've been our guest. Thanks so much.
Thank you.